Good morning. I will call to order this morning's Zoning and Planning Committee. This is our regular meeting of November 30th, 2017. I'm Lisa Bender. I chair the committee, and we have a quorum with the full committee today of Council Members Reich, Goodman, Andrew Johnson, Council President Johnson, and Council Member Warsame. We have 7 items that are all listed on the consent agenda. I'll be pulling several items off for a bit of discussion. And of course, any committee member can pull items as they wish. Item number 1 is the local historic landmark designation of the Messiah Evangelical Lutheran Church. Item number 2 is Minneapolis Arts Commission appointments, which are listed on the agenda. And we're very thankful for the folks who are willing to serve on our boards and commissions. Many of them have a high number of hours of volunteer time, and they are really make a big difference. Now, item number 3 is a rezoning, which would be denying an application to rezone a property at 1120 West Broadway. Item number 4 is a street vacation at 23rd Avenue North. That is also the staff recommendation is to deny that application. Item number 5 is approving an application for a drainage and utility easement on the block bound by 51st Avenue North between Girard and Humboldt. Item number 6 is approving the Van White Memorial Boulevard Station Small Area Plan. And item number 7 is passage of an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances for pet boarding regulations and animal shelters. So I will pull items, let's see, 4, is that right? So I'll pull item 1. Councilmember Yang, which item is the vacation? 4, thank you, that's what I thought, and then item 6. So that means I will move items 2, 3, 5, and 7 for approval on the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull any other items off or any discussion on those items? Council President Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a short on item 2 on the Arts Commission, I just wanted to mention Erica Danny, who's the appointment of the council from Ward 4, did contact me, and she's got some health stuff going on, so she wanted to be here today but can't, and so I'm delighted she's again willing to serve, as you said. And then I would just also mention Joan Vorderbergen, who has been a fantastic partner to the city through her work at the Historic Theater Group and Hennepin Theater Trust, all the work that she's done on Hennepin Avenue. So I'm delighted she's applying as well, and all the other people that are willing to serve on our boards and commissions. As you mentioned, it can mean a very big commitment and great deal of time. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And those consent items carry. That brings us back to item number 1, which is recommended historic designation. I think we'd like a brief presentation from staff. Is that right, Councilmember Warsame?
Good morning and thank you. My name is Catherine Sandlin. I'm a planner with the Long Range Planning Department. On June 21st, 2016, the Heritage Preservation Commission nominated Messiah Evangelical Lutheran Church, located at 2501 Columbus Avenue South, as a landmark. On April 18th, 2017, the HPC extended the period of interim protection through December 21st, 2017. On May 30th, a copy of the designation study was submitted to the Minnesota SHPO for comment. On July 20th. They concurred that Messiah Evangelical Lutheran Church is a suitable candidate for designation. On August 30th, the designation study was presented for review to the Minneapolis City Planning Commission, and the designation study is now before you. We received some written comment that should be included in your packet. Messiah Church is located at the intersection of East 25th Street and Columbus Avenue South in the West Phillips neighborhood. The church sits on the northwest corner of a block that consists of newer contemporary construction adjacent to brick parking structure and a vacant lot. Across East 25th Street, there is a mix of original and new residential structures, and across Columbus Avenue is Messiah's modern parish hall. Harry Wild Jones designed the church. It was completed in 1916. The church is a two-story red brick Gothic revival with a classroom wing on the east side. The primary entrance is on the north elevation, facing East 25th Street. A bell tower rises above the double wood entry doors. The red brick mass is broken up by recesses, arc glass windows, brick pilasters, and limestone coping sills, accents, and religious symbolism. The largest window is a three-part stained glass located on the west elevation. Majority of the arc glass windows are protected by plexiglass storms. The red asphalt roof is punctuated by gable ends and dormers. The church's first floor interior auditorium uses oak and decorative art glass extensively. Striking features of the space includes the large stained glass windows and the hammer beam timber truss system. The first and second floor library, classrooms, and offices on the east end of the buildings are fairly simple in design with wood trim, rectangular art glass windows throughout. The basement houses a storage space, a mechanical room, a kitchen, and a 1950s fellowship hall addition. There is no evidence of a formal landscape plan. So the historic significance of the building. Messiah is significant for its architect, Harry Wild Jones, its physical expression of the Swedish immigrant experience in South Minneapolis, and the evolution of Swedish American Lutheran religious celebrations. The church is one of the first Swedish Lutheran churches to use English exclusively in its worship services and its business. Messiah was a leader in defining what it meant to be Swedish American. It served as a bridge between old country Swedish traditions and life in 20th century America. Jones practiced architecture in Minneapolis from 1885 to 1918, and is well known for landmarks such as the Lakewood Cemetery Chapel and the Butler Building. Jones's 1910 marketing materials focused on his firm's expertise in ecclesiastical architecture. He prided himself on creating beautiful churches for congregations of modest means. In fact, his motto was a new church dedicated free of debt. In 1916, Messiah approached Jones to design their church. Jones' design was one of 5 proposals that the congregation received. Messiah selected Jones's design because it offered a beautiful church at a price that they could afford. So that brings us to Messiah. It's the embodiment of Jones's design vision. Messiah's congregation continued to worship in the church until 2008, and the congregation still owns the church, and at the time of the study, rented the space for other congregations to use. The period of significance for this building is 1916 to 2008. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for staff? Councilmember Borsami.
What is the condition of the church?
The study itself didn't do a conditions assessment, and that's something that definitely could be an outcome of work, but the conditions of the church, other than just a tertiary exterior and interior look, was not assessed. So no architects or engineers were brought on.
Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So let's just get it all out there. How did this get into the field for designation in the first place?
The Heritage Preservation Commission nominated it for
Who
consideration.
specifically?
Commissioner Sue Hunter-Weir.
And does she have some personal connection to this, or why would she be bringing this up out of the blue? Isn't it because the church owns the building and they're concerned about the future of the church, and they might want to sell the church, and so someone found out about that and then brought it through for designation to try to prevent them from doing that? Let's talk about what's happening here instead
those are
of like
good
hide
questions,
behind
and
it.
they're not questions that I think I'm able to answer what her intent behind the nomination would be. I can speak to what the nomination process, what the research brought out historically.
I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the backstory here, which seems to be the bigger story about what's going on.
Councilmember Borsami.
No question. I want to make a motion.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you.
Thank
Councilmember
you.
Warsame.
To the congregation, to our constituents, and they really want to move on and basically sell the church. And Children's Hospital is very much interested in it. And if this historic preservation landmark is given, then that prevents them moving forward. And since 2008, I think they've been in the Lutheran Social Services building. So the congregation entirely supports moving forward. And I think we shouldn't prevent them. So I make a motion to deny the historic landmark designation.
So Councilmember Warsame has made a motion to deny the designation. I guess maybe, I don't know if staff can answer this, but maybe I should have asked earlier. Do you know, I know you said you didn't study the condition of the building. Do we have a sense that there is interest in tearing down the building? Like, so the church wants to sell the building, as Councilmember Warsame mentioned, as we understand. Have you talked with them, or maybe the council member has, about their intentions of looking for different buyers, or how they see the building being marketed, what kind of uses they are exploring, and if we think that there is a potential for this building to be reused without its designation?
Well, I've had some brief conversations with the congregation, and I do know that they are looking to sell the building, and they no longer want to maintain and care for the building. I don't know what their status of how they've been marketing the building, how they've been thinking about it. I am happy to talk with them about those possibilities and those processes, and how to potentially connect with a broker who can speak to the value of the historic structure. But as to what they've done, I can't answer that to date. Looking at the building from the exterior, I don't see anything that is of cause of great concern. My understanding in speaking with the congregation is that their boiler, their heating system, has suffered some damage and needs to be repaired or replaced, and that's been financially kind of out of their reach.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved, carries the denial. I know there are folks here who came who were interested in this. Please feel free to follow up with the council member or members of the committee or staff after this meeting. It was not noticed as a public hearing, but we appreciate you coming to follow the issue.
Madam Chair, so I think some of the congregation are here, so just to explain to them.
Sure.
We denied
Exactly. Right. So the full approval will be at the council meeting in a little over a week, on a week from Friday. But this committee has recommended denying the designation. Thank you, Councilmember Warsame. Councilmember Goodman.
Which doesn't mean we said you could tear it down. It just says we mean we're not going to designate it. That's a totally different thing. I just want to make sure you understand that. I mean, see these members of the congregation, they'd be probably heartbroken to see it torn down too. They would like to sell to a preservation-minded buyer, I would guess, or maybe not. But the bottom line is we're not saying tear it down. We're just saying we're not going to designate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so that concludes item number 1. It brings us to item number 4, which is a street vacation. And we will start with a brief presentation from staff. Thank you to Councilmember Yang, who has come today for this meeting and doesn't serve on the committee, but we'll invite you to speak whenever you'd like.
Good morning, Chair Bender and committee members. The proposed street vacation is for the section of 23rd Avenue North between 2nd Street North and 1st Street North. The applicant, North 2nd Street Steel Supply, is located directly to the south of 23rd Avenue North. They are requesting to vacate this portion of the street for use as a private road for truck parking, staging, loading, and for the distribution of their steel products. The site is surrounded primarily by industrial uses in the I-2 Medium Industrial District, although there are also residential and commercial uses within a mile of the site. The Mississippi River is approximately 750 feet to the east, and I-94 is 600 feet to the west. The city owns the right-of-way that's directly east to the area of the subject site, which is 1st Street North. You can see it more clearly in this photo, and that and 1st Street North here contains the BNSF spur line. The applicant has stated that this portion of the right-of-way is not currently used by through traffic due to the railroad tracks being directly located to the east. They've also stated that the road is in poor condition and that they would intend to privately maintain it if the land were to be vacated. However, no other changes or development plans are proposed. Both Public Works and CPED are recommending denial of the, they have recommended denial of this request, and the Planning Commission also recommended denial at their October 16th meeting. The area that's proposed for vacation is needed for a public purpose, and it's part of a public transportation corridor. Public Works is recommending denial in order to preserve the street grid for future transportation uses and for existing and future utility purposes. In particular, there's a water main and sanitary sewer main and storm sewer main that run across and through 23rd Avenue North. There's also a new storm sewer that's programmed for construction. The spur line that is located along 1st Street North may be decommissioned in the future now that the Upper Harbor Terminal is inactive. So should this portion of 1st Street North be reused for through traffic in the future, it would be imperative to also retain connections to 2nd Street North and the surrounding area through this 23rd Avenue North section. Staff recognizes that it's unlikely that this would ever connect directly to the West River Parkway at this time because of the life source development that is directly to the east of 1st Street North. The Above the Falls plan includes this section of right-of-way in its study area. It has been identified again as a portion of the street grid that would connect to the river. In addition, there's a future bike map that shows that the 2nd Street North, that's to the west of the area to be vacated, would help to connect this area to the river. CPED is recommending denial, as I mentioned, and so is the Department of Public Works, and the Planning Commission upheld this recommendation. Should the vacation be approved, the Department of Public Works, Excel Energy, and Centerpoint would require easements. Leave this slide up, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Other questions for staff? Could you show us, is there an image of what the intention of the vacation is, like what the final outcome will be? That
There's no development that's proposed. So what's currently happening is just staging and loading and parking, and that would continue to be the case.
Are there any other questions for staff? Councilmember Reich?
Yeah, on that point, in the documents, it says proposed use for vacated area, and it just says proposed uses as described in your presentation. But that doesn't, that wouldn't execute an agreement with any permanency or force of performance. I mean, it just says this is what we're contemplating presently. But once they have the rights to do what they want to do.
That's correct.
So maybe another way to ask Councilmember Reich's question is that the vacation would allow development to potentially occur over this right of way or whatever other uses maybe be in the future.
That's right. It would be split down the middle. So half of it would go to the property owner to the north and half of it would go to the property owner to the south, who's the applicant. So they would have to decide how that would be developed if that were to occur.
Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I think one of the things that strikes me is in my ward, we're dealing with situations today that limit and impair our ability to develop areas or to make the best decisions in terms of the public street grid based off of decisions that were made 40 or 50 years ago when people thought, oh, it'll never be put to use. So I guess I do have concerns about making a permanent decision that might impair us 40, 50 years down the road. I guess my question would be, is there any way to move forward with this on a kind of temporary basement, or to have an easement for the city for a road in the future where we could turn this over potentially to them and say, hey, now given the conditions and the circumstances, you can use this for those kind of purposes, but then in the future, if we need this, we're coming back and we have that ability to get it. Is there like a light version of this, basically? Maybe that's a question for our city attorney.
Sure. Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, the vacation decision is a legislative decision, so you're unable to condition it. It's a vote up or down. If the council were to vacate this right of way, in order to reacquire it in the future, you would have to purchase it at an arm's length transaction, or if you had the ability to use eminent domain in some fashion, you could do that.
And would there be the ability to do an easement for a road or something in the future that would kind of reserve that space?
We would have to pay for that interest in some fashion if we would like to do that. But there's no ability to reserve one with your action on the vacation, no.
Well, I mean, it's our road today, so we couldn't make that
correct.
Easement.
And their request is to vacate it. So you either have to, it's either up or down. There's no ability to condition. It's a legislative decision. So
maybe another way to ask Councilmember Johnson's question is there a way for us as a city to retain ownership and not vacate the land, but still achieve the desired outcome for the use in the interim, or for the, for a temporary period of time?
Commissioners, I think as Ms. Smith indicated, the applicant has been using the right-of-way for loading, parking, and similar activities related to their business. And the city's sort of informal position is that we have no intent of making them cease that activity, and they can continue to use that. I don't know how much appetite there would be to kind of formalize that kind of arrangement, but again, from the city's standpoint, we're not anxious to go tell the applicant to stop using the street right-of-way in a way that would benefit their business the way they have been using it.
Councilmember Johnson, did you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, it seems like there's a compelling case for street vacation, but also that might make sense for trying to formalize that sort of arrangement. So I personally think that could be a potential compromise here, is to formalize that usage now, but then it would allow the city the flexibility in the future, decades down the road, for things we can't foresee. Maybe there would be a reason for us to need this road or to use it.
Council President Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the property would be split between the two owners. Who's the owner to the south? It looks like there's two. Well,
the owner to the south is the applicant, North 2nd Street.
Okay, and the other, okay, so the other side is Bryn?
I believe it's
is it Bryn Glass?
AEG.
Okay. AEG.
I might be mistaken about that.
Okay. So what's their interest in this? The property to the north? Are they? I mean,
they are also supportive of the vacation. They're currently also using that section of the right of way, but I wouldn't be able to speak to what their exact interest is.
Okay. Madam Chair, if I might. I have actually, I think this was at least floated a couple years ago, and I remember driving by and looking at it and going down the alley and, getting out and looking at the parcel. And it seems to me if you'd move the map a little bit, the natural place for someone to come into the riverfront is going to be on 22nd Avenue North, where just north of the Park Board headquarters. This is not going to go through because of the parking lot, as you explained, for Life Source. And maybe Life Source won't be there in 20 years or 50 years or whatever. But I also, I think it is really optimistic. There may be part of that railroad that goes away, but in my lifetime, I'm not going to, of course that's shorter, not going to see all that railroad be unused. So I am interested, though. I mean, do we ever lease a street to, or I suppose we do, property that's our property to landowners to use? If we would do it, I suppose we could ask for, instead of informally, we could actually ask for a lease of the land. I see Mr. Pork.
Madam Chair, Council. I don't know if Mr. Pork is. I honestly don't know. I'm not aware of any situation like that. But.
Okay. Huh. Do you know of anything that would preclude us from doing that, Mr. Nelson, like on a long-term basis? I've actually got a little street in my neck of the woods.
Nothing is
kind of the same situation. We're not maintaining the street up by McDonald's on in North Minneapolis, and it's a pit. It's a pit, and we're not going to picks it up. So, I mean, I wouldn't doubt that I'll see a vacation, I won't see it, but I'll see a vacation request in for that street. So,
Mr. Port, did you have?
Chairman Bender, Councilmember Johnson, if I may. In this vicinity of the city, including up by where the old American or Northern Metal site was, there are occasions where the city has kind of turned a blind eye, if you will, benign eye to people having activity or parking on the right of way. In my experience, Public Works has been very reluctant to formalize any agreements, whether through easement or lease, in those conditions. So the status quo has been no harm, no foul.
yeah.
But I know in my experience dealing with them, there's been, I'm not aware of any of them that actually did end up granting easements or leases on it. They're just very reluctant, specifically in this area along the river. My only concern would be to make sure the applicant understands we're not giving up any rights to, for a claim of adverse possession or anything like that. So the fact that they're using it doesn't mean we're relinquishing our rights that it's ours, but I'm not aware of Public Works entering any of those agreements recently. There may be some out there, but in my experience, they have demurred from doing that.
The other thing I would point out, Madam Chair, too, is actually our, access to the riverfront. We're working actively on 26th Avenue North as being the entry point for the trails and that sort of thing. So I think practically this is not a big deal, but because I do think people will access the riverfront from one block to the south and then 26th Avenue North if we ever persuade the legislature to help us with that 26th connection.
Councilmember Reich.
Thank you. And I concur with Council President Johnson's assessment of the relative importance or strategic importance of this to the River First Plan, which is a very important document. I know it's a long-term document. It's a 40, 50-year plan document. And so long-term considerations are valid from that framework. But practically speaking, this is not the high priority, high value area where we're going to get access to the river. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of impatient with the more high value ones like 26th Avenue being a particular one where we should get that done first before we worry about some of these other things. However, some of the other considerations in terms of public works, I haven't done my homework from the public works lens. What are our drainage issue needs up there? What are our pipe needs? And so, but I'm not disinclined to be accommodating to the business. And so perhaps to weed through some of these ideas, Council Member Johnson has had some interesting sort of takes on this as well that I'm intrigued by. If we could buy the time to have the people at the table, I would defer to Madam Chair for that both from a practical timing issue and the appropriateness from your viewpoint.
So if I'm correct, we have one more zoning and planning meeting before the term ends, which was a special meeting scheduled. And someone will have to remind me when it is.
Like 12th?
December 12th.
The 12th.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 12th of the morning of Tuesday the 12th. So I would be happy to move to postpone the item to give more time.
I mean, there isn't a time sensitive.
I think it's, is there any issues? So staff is nodding that we could procedurally postpone the item. There isn't a time clock running, if that's the will of the committee. Okay.
That's correct.
Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may just make a couple of comments, just because I'm here, and I will defer to the committee with regards to how this proceeds. But, with regards to this specific issue, it's appeared before the City Council before in the past, over a decade ago, I believe. And the property owners along the stretch of 23rd Avenue North have been trying to get the city to fulfill its obligation to maintain the right of way. This is, if you look at this, it's just a block and it's a dead end basically that goes to the railroad. With regards to maintaining the right of way, I mean, we have not done a very good job of meeting this obligation in terms of plowing and repair of the streets. The street is in poor condition if it is ever plowed at all. The Rosens, who are making this or moving forward with this appeal, have asked for the responsibility to maintain this right of way so they can continue to operate successfully in North Minneapolis. They operate a steel company.
They're also willing to exchange easements for all utilities necessary here. So they're very flexible in terms of making this work for us. I want to acknowledge the hard work and the concerns of planning staff and also public works staff, but I just don't find the argument that we must preserve this right of way in the public domain and give access to a bike path that could hypothetically be built on a railroad right of way that we do not currently control and which is still active, a compelling one. And the other piece, when you look at this, is the Life Source facility blocks access to the river on 23rd Avenue North. It's pretty glaring there. So, I want to just point out that, this isn't really the last straw for this street. Future easements or public access at this street can be part of any future redevelopment plans approved for this site when this steel company is no longer the best use for this site. And so, that's why, for my purposes, I would support this vacation.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Yang. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the arguments from Councilmember Yang, and I think that this is something where I think we can get to the outcome that the business is looking for, but I think perhaps there's a different way than a street vacation. They've clearly been trying for this street vacation for over a decade. I don't think waiting another cycle on the council is going to hurt anything to keep the door open and really consider the long-term prospects for this area. So I'm comfortable with bringing Public Works to the table and the applicants to the table and seeing if we can figure out a way to make this work for them. It also provides flexibility for the future for the city. So I'm going to go ahead and move that we postpone this a cycle, and we'll bring Public Works to the table.
Thank you. So is there any discussion on the motion to postpone to the zoning and planning meeting on December 12th? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item carries. All right, so that brings us to our final item, which we also pulled from consent, which is item 6, the Van White Memorial Boulevard Station Small Area Plan. I know there are folks here from the community who've been communicating with the council member's office about their concerns. So we would like to start with a presentation from staff, I think, and then go from there with the discussion.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Jack Byers, Manager of Long Range Planning. In a moment, Jim Vo will give you a more detailed presentation of the station area itself and the station area plan. I wanted to take a moment to give you some high-level comments about the genesis of this plan. As you know, we are working in close conjunction with Metro Transit, MnDOT, and Hennepin County to build the Blue Line extension, and there will be 2 stations on Olson Highway. One of those stations is at Van White Boulevard. We see a huge opportunity in this particular part of the city because there is a great deal of vacant land. There's also a great deal of land that's owned by various public entities, ourselves, Minneapolis Public Housing, and MnDOT as well. And so we see a particular opportunity to leverage and take advantage of that transit investment, that $1 billion investment, to bring new housing and hopefully new commercial and neighborhood services to an area that is underserved by retail and commercial services. As many of you might know, the Heritage Park neighborhood was developed back in the late 1990s and early 2000s. And at that time, there was no market to actually drive some retail development, particularly a grocery store for that area. So in the multiple public meetings that we had in conjunction with Hennepin County and Metro Transit, we heard from a lot of folks that for them to get what they need, they have to leave the neighborhood. So one of the drivers of this plan was to develop the highest possible intensity on those parcels that are publicly owned and help that as a mixed use and mixed income neighborhood, help that drive that retail development. We've worked very closely with MnDOT and Metro Transit to make sure we have the configuration of Olson Highway that's going to create a pedestrian-friendly environment and a bike-friendly environment and a transit-friendly environment so that those environments can actually become the center of a commercial node. We are also working closely with Metro Transit on the C line. The C line is going to go down Glenwood Avenue, so there's an opportunity for another commercial node at Van White and Glenwood. So this has been a long process. We've been working for a couple of years. We worked closely with Hennepin Community Works on some pre-planning. The scope of their projects did not include some of the details we need to have a successful small area plan that works for our entitlements process, which is why we have updated or continued the plan to do that work. And I want to point out that in addition to Hennepin Community Works, Metro Transit, and MnDOT, we have met, particularly staff have met with folks from Harrison, NERC, Bryn Mawr, Glenwood, Sumner Olson Heritage Park, and also the Bassett Creek Valley Rock. We did extend the typical 1 mile radius project area a little bit further south so that we could simultaneously deal with some issues down in the Bassett Creek Valley area where there are some opportunities as well. And as you know, that particular part of the station area is also proximate to the new Bassett Creek Valley station. I want to point out that the staff have done some marvelous work, some tough work, especially collaborative work with government agencies and with neighborhoods. Jim Bull is the project manager, and in our office, Ratana Sangswalichan and Adrienne Bachheim. Also Beth Grossen from Business Development and Miles Mercer as well. And we've also been in consultation and had input and help from the housing director, Andrea Brennan, Angie Skildum, who was the manager of multifamily housing, and also before she moved to San Francisco, Sherry Shoquist, who was working closely with MPHA on some of those station sites. So I'm going to have Jim give you a presentation, and I do want to let you know that we have been aware of and we have been sensitive to the number and complexity of problems and challenges in this part of the city, and we have worked diligently to do what we can to set this up, but we're also aware that we cannot solve all of the problems of the city in a single square mile.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Goodwin.
Madam Chair, this was a consent item. So I don't think we need a big presentation. The reason we're even discussing it at all is because of a concern from some of our friends with regard to some housing policy. So why don't we just address that? I completely agree. I've met with Mr. Vull, Mr. Byers, and I think they've done a great job with this, and they've taken into account the concerns of all of the various neighborhoods and groups who kind of are on the same page, which is an amazing thing. I will note the Heritage Park folks are also on the same page. Bryn Mawr, Harrison, Near North, it's great. So let's just address this one issue if we could, rather than getting a whole presentation. I love you, Jim, but like I don't want to hear it again. Or I'm not allowed to say that anymore.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Yang, did you want to chime in? Save us, Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I typically don't come and get so involved in a committee that I don't chair or am a part of, but here I am with this. And the Harrison Neighborhood Association contacted me about a week ago, having concerns about this. They raised some concerns with regards to displacement and their visions for what should happen in this area. And so here I am. We have folks from the Harrison Neighborhood Association and from the neighborhood here as well. And, I wanted to just point out what Mr. Byers had mentioned a little bit earlier, which is, we can't solve all problems within a single square mile. But, in terms of the visions and the desires that the neighborhood association and also the people want, I would just say, hopefully they'll be realistic as well. And so with that, I believe my aide had forwarded some staff directions, and hopefully somebody will move that. But, it's just this idea that our staff will be in contact with the Harrison Neighborhood Association to talk with their members and also the residents there, just to see what can be done in the future to make this much more palatable to them. But the idea ultimately is, development happens at its own pace, and sometimes it's about being realistic and not I guess, dreamy or not hoping that all this amazing development will just happen. I mean, sometimes, a lot of times developers just do it because, it makes sense to them. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Yang. Council President Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, this is going to be an issue for us across North Minneapolis, and one of the things that I think, if you talk about displacement, one of the things that displaces people when development does happen and values rise, and you know, when we're talking about tax policy, North Minneapolis this year is the place where the most value increase is happening, and so I've gotten many contacts from constituents about their property taxes this year because our values are increasing. They've been, either going down or static for a long time. Now we're seeing those valuation increases, and we really don't have at the city control over how properties are valued. It's done in compliance with state law, and I think that this is something that this is what would drive someone out of their home, is if the property taxes go up so much that they can't afford to live there anymore. That is what is going to cause displacement, really and truly. Because people, whatever your house payment is, your mortgage and interest are fixed. Your insurance goes up and your taxes go up. So those are the kind of things that, I think realistically as a community, we should be thinking about talking to our legislators about this. And other communities have gotten policies and laws in place that at least can tamp down that increase in values that cause property taxes to go up in areas. We did it for old houses years ago. There was kind of a property tax cap, and it lasted for a certain amount of time. And so I think, as a community, we should be talking about going to the legislature and seeing if we can get some relief about that, working with our delegation about that kind of a process. But, my colleague, Councilmember Yang, is right. Developers go where they can make money. And, we're going to see them coming into our community. We haven't had a ton of interest for a very long time, but we're going to see them coming into our community because of these investments that are made by the public. And so, again, I think as a community, one of the things, and I would encourage the neighborhood association to bring in the legislators to talk about, what can we do? What have other states done about, other communities done about this pressure that results from public investment and changes in demographics. So, but I'm happy to make the motion today to direct CPED, Long Range Planning and Comprehensive Plan staff to work with the Harrison Neighborhood Association and incorporate their concerns about affordable housing and land use into the comprehensive plan and any possible revisions to the Van White Memorial Boulevard Station Small Area Plan. And then I further direct housing staff, CPED housing staff, to work with the Harrison Neighborhood Association to acknowledge their concerns in the revisions being considered to the Unified Housing Policy of the City of Minneapolis. I'll make those two motions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what's incredible about this is that the Harrison neighborhood has acknowledged that even though they have levels of impaction of poverty, they still want to continue to build affordable housing, which consistently makes my case against Mr. Orfield and others that the city should not be continuing to build affordable housing because we have too much. And this neighborhood is a really good example of that. I share the border between Harrison and Bryn Mawr, and I think that the neighbors in both neighborhoods share their values, that we want all sorts of different people to be able to live in these neighborhoods, and we want to continue to see affordable housing. Our committee at CD will take up the uniform housing policy in the next couple of weeks, maybe next month, I'm not sure exactly when, and we will also be looking to make sure that we're not prohibiting in any way the development of affordable housing in impacted neighborhoods, because that is not the policy of the city. The policy of the city is to continue to grow everywhere, to have affordable in every place, and to try to have some market rate in every place as well. And I worry about the train coming through and not having affordable housing adjacent to it, which is the whole point of the subsidy for the train in the first place. So I think we're on the same page, and I think it's great that the neighborhood has been so active, and I stand with you, and we'll work with you on the uniform housing policy as well.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the staff direction? So this would be a motion to approve the small area plan as well as to incorporate the staff direction as moved by Council President Johnson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries. That is our final item. If my colleagues will indulge just for a moment, our clerk, Diana Armstrong, is leaving us at the city, and I'm told that she is going to go care for her grandchildren, who are 3 young people under the age of 2. So you will have to report back which is more challenging, wrangling council members or 3 babies. And we have so valued your service to the city, your attention to detail in a committee where all of our motions and actions have to maintain legal standing and have to stand up to legal challenge. Your attention to detail and insistence that we really, dot the I's and cross the T's has been really valuable to the city. And we've also it's been just a joy to work with you. I know all of us feel that way. We will miss you, but we look forward to lots of pictures and stories from you when you come back to visit. Thank you so much. All right. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.